With part 3 of the Stairway to Heaven guitar lesson, we'll focus on the song's third and final section, the hard rock section. And at this point of the song, there are several guitars layered into the mix, but we're going to focus on the essential rhythm guitar parts, which can be played by one guitarist. We'll cover each of these sections with a step-by-step approach. Section 6 starts with an open D chord just strummed once and you let it sustain. Then the next chord sequence will be based off this D chord shape, starting by lifting our middle finger off the top string. That first chord is a D sus2 with the middle finger lifted off, the top string open. Then we go back to a regular D. Then we place the pinky down, fourth finger on the top string, 3rd fret, and that's the 3-chord sequence: D sus2, D, D sus4. And we sort of rev things up by adding a strum pattern of down, up, down to that. Then we do it again. We do it another time, but we make it 4 strums this time. 1, 2, 3, then keep the pinky down. 4, and add that extra strum. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then go back to D for the final part of this D section. Now, how we would count everything off after that initial strum, we'll count it as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Then from that D chord, we keep the 3rd finger anchored. We move the middle finger to the 5th string, 3rd fret. And this is a C add 9 chord shape. We're going to start by strumming that. And while that's ringing, we're going to move the 1st finger to the top string, 2nd fret, and we're going to focus on the top strings. And you could strum that a couple different ways as long as you have a 4 count. Down, down, up, down. That's one way to do it. So putting that together, then repeat. Now, when you're playing unaccompanied, one thing you can do, you can add some extra strums if you want, just to sort of fill in the gaps. Here's an example. So that's a plan B if you want to add that for unaccompanied playing. But let's put it together now, all of line 1 from the top, starting with the sustained D chord. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, go. Line 2 will pretty much follow line 1, except we leave out the opening D strum. And also on the last measure, we're going to do a chord substitution. In line 1, we played the C add 9 section twice. But for line 2, we're going to drop the bass note down 1 fret, and that becomes a G/B chord. And then we're going to add a note to that with the middle finger going to the top string, 2nd fret. And just as we did with the C add 9 section, we release on that last strum. Release from the 2nd fret to the open string. So that new section, the GB section, will sound like this. And if we backed it up 1 measure and connected the two, it's important to emphasize the bass note, the descending bass line here. So with the C add 9, now one note on this section is on the original recording you will hear an overdub guitar. There's a couple guitars playing the rhythm, but there's also the solo guitar. It's sort of a lead-in riff to the actual guitar solo. So again, we're focusing on a performance for one guitarist, but if you do want to throw in that riff, you could do this as a way to end section 6. And that leads in, that A minor is actually the beginning of section 7, but we wanted to show you how that connected in. But again, for a one-person performance, sticking with the chords is your best option. Now, before we review all of section 6, I want to throw in the lead-in from section 5, the end of section 5. It sort of connects to that opening D chord, and here's what I mean. This is the last phrase from section 5. So since that blends together, when we review all of section 6, we're going to add that lead-in from section 5. So here's the review. The lead-in we just did, then line 1, and then line 2 from section 6. So here we go from the top. 1, 2, ready, go. Into the next section, section 7, which starts with an A minor chord. Section 7 is a 3-chord progression that's repeated 10 times. It's played during the guitar solo. And of course the guitar solo itself stands out, but the rhythm guitar parts, even though they're layered guitars, they're sort of buried in the mix a little bit. You have the lead guitar, and then you have the bass and drums, and then you barely hear the rhythm guitar in the background. So again, for this lesson, we're assuming you're going to be playing this unaccompanied. So we're going to give you what I think is a good way to play this unaccompanied without drums or bass. First, the chord shapes, which will be an A minor chord, then an A minor 7/G. And from A minor to that chord shape, you simply just lift the third finger, and that'll be the bass note, A minor 7/G. And then I'll show you what I've seen on various videos of Jimmy Page playing this live. I've seen him play this progression different ways as well. So there's no 100% way to play this for one person. But what I've seen him do is play an F chord shape, 1, 2, 3 fingers in a diagonal sort of line here, first, second, third fret, while the thumb curls over to fret the bass note. And again, for an unaccompanied performance, I would say it is important to emphasize what's being played by the bass, which is basically A, G, F. And what we're going to do is play some chords along with that. So here's how we're going to do that progression. Starting with the A minor, basically we'll start with, it's sort of like a boom, boom, sort of acknowledging the bass, but maybe strumming a few strings, and then on that last strum, including the second or even the top strings. Same thing with the A minor 7/G. Same thing with the F. Except for the F, we're going to extend that a little bit. After we're going to add this. And what you can do on that F, essentially it's an F, but if you happen to include the top string, that's an F major 7th. Both work. I've seen different versions of this where they say to play an F major 7th or a regular F. If you occasionally play that top string on that, that's fine. But again, that F section is going to sound like this. Let's back it up to the 3-chord progression. I find this a little difficult to play. This is option 1 for the F shape. We have another option for F, and that is to play this sort of F chord, so actually an F/C. Now if you're playing with the bass player will take care of that implied F note. So if you're playing along with someone else where you have an F note provided, this is a much easier way to play that final chord. Here's how it will sound. The F/C, I'll back it up to the first 2 chords. And this particular progression is played 10 consecutive times during the guitar solo. and then that'll lead into section 8. Section 8 is another verse section. It's when the vocals come in after the guitar solo, and the chord sequence is essentially the same. A minor 7/G, and F, but we're going to throw in a strumming variation which involves palm muting. Resting the fingers on the strings, just getting that sort of percussive sound, 1, 2, 3, 4. And how we're going to apply that to this section, going with the first chord, A minor, down, down, then 1, 2, 3, 4 with the palm mute. Down, down, then the A minor 7/G. And then for the F section, here's how it's going to sound, then we'll break it down. We're going to jump up to G for the last strum. And how we count that off, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. You're sort of lifting off the strings slightly, almost playing them open. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Again, there are numerous guitars on this, and also the bass and drums are kind of really heavy on this section. So when you're playing unaccompanied, there's a lot of options to play this. This is just one. We're going to do a couple other options later in the clip, but let's put this section together first. Here we go, starting with the A minor. 1, 2, ready, go. Now, if you're not a fan of the F shape here, we have an alternate F chord. This is actually an F/C, technically speaking. Now, we really want to emphasize the bass. But if you're playing with the bass player, let the bass player take care of the proper bass notes. As a guitarist, you could try this F voicing. It might be a little easier for you. Here's how it's going to sound. We'll start with the A minor. Oh, by the way, with this different F shape, we're going to use that as well for the G. We're going to slide up for that last G chord with the same shape. Let's hear how this chord voicing sounds. 1, 2, ready, go. And another option, one last option for this is for this last G chord. Well, when you play the open 2, 3, and 4 strings together, you just brush across those. That also is a G chord. It implies a G chord as well. That's G, so is that. So another option is to simply let go of the strings for the final G, and here's how that will sound with this progression. 1, 2, ready, go. So it's a very subtle difference, but you have 3 options. I think either one will work. Whatever works best for you is the one you should work on the most. Now, the original recording, section 7 is played 10 consecutive times, followed by section 8 played 7 consecutive times. And it's essentially the same chord sequence, but there are variations in the strum pattern. So it's a good idea to get used to connecting the 2 sections and switching between the strum patterns. So what we're going to do is, instead of doing 10 plus 7, we'll do 4 plus 4. Section 7 4 times, section 8 4 times, and I'll also throw in some of the variations I talked about so you can hear how they might sound compared to the initial chords. So here we go from the top. 1, 2, ready, go. Another option for section 8 is to add in a guitar riff that's played over the F section. Now, of course, when you're playing unaccompanied, you would substitute this riff for the chords. And here's how the riff sounds. that is the bottom string 1st fret, and then a slide up to the 5th fret. 2 on that, and then 2 on the slide. Well, 1 and then 2, and then the next string 3rd fret. And then all odd frets, a slide to 7, 7, 5, 3, 7, 5, 3. Here's how they'll sound with the chord progression, substituting it for the F chord in section 8. So here's how it's going to sound. Section 9 is played a couple of times to end the final verse of the song, and what it is, it's pretty much the same progression, but we're going to substitute an F major 7th for that final chord. And that, if you recall that alternate F chord we played earlier, which is technically an F/C because of the bass note, if we add that top open string, that becomes an F major 7th as opposed to an F. And I would suggest for section 9 to emphasize that top string for the F major 7th sound. Here's how it sounds, the progression from the top. You just let it ring, and then you repeat it again. Now, when you're playing unaccompanied, you might want to fill in that gap a little bit with the rhythm. You don't have a drummer or a bass player, so one suggestion is to maybe add a few strums to that, like this. Emphasizing that first strum and just sort of meandering a little bit to sort of fill in the gap a little bit if you want. Section 10 is the song's ending, and we're going to follow the same essential chords from the previous section: A minor 7th, G, F major 7th. There is heavy bass on this section as well, so to sort of imply the bass line when we're playing unaccompanied on guitar, here's a suggested way to play the ending, which is going to be this. Sort of emphasizing 2 strums on the lower strings, then a brush, same thing with the A minor 7/G, and then a nice sustained F major 7th chord. Now, on the original recording, that's it as far as the guitar parts go, that's the ending. But to sort of follow the vocals, especially if you're just playing this alone on guitar without vocals, we want to sort of follow that vocal line that ends the song, and that harkens back to the first lesson, the fingerstyle lesson on Stairway to Heaven. We're going to play this part. Again, that requires fingerstyle, so you sort of have to lose the pick for that ending. Here's how it sounds put together, section 10, with that fingerstyle part. Here we go.